headlines are in, the papers are on the stand, and the stories shaping today's conversations are ready for review, from the country's economy and governance to security and human interest. The front pages offers a snapshot of where the nation stands this morning. Good morning and welcome to Newspaper Review on JDN Radio 101.5 FM, broadcasting for all. I am Abiodun Samson and I will be taking you through the headlines making the front pages of the dailies this morning, Wednesday the 17th of June 2026. And on the stand this morning I have the Nigerian Tribune, The Punch, The Nation and also Daily Post. So settle in as we scan the front pages and bring you the major stories making headlines across Nigeria this morning. And this morning, I will be starting with the Punch newspaper with this headline that says, Max slams federal government after appeal court reverses ADCD registration. State kicks as Senate moves to amend Electricity Act. 150 terrorists convicted in 48 hours, says AGF. Drivers' deaths, Air Force detain officers and launches probe. NDC to bind Obi Kwankwanso with anti-defection oaths. Senate recalls members from recess over rising insecurity. UK sanctions Nigerian firm linked to Russia finance network. Shetima, Akpabio, 18 governors rally Ekiti people for Oyebamiji's re-elections. Federal government releases barely 5% of 54.93 trillion naira 3 years road budget. And those are the headlines from the Punch newspaper for this morning. And moving forward to The Nation for this morning with this headline that says, renewed onslaught against bandits, terrorists excites Tinubu. Respite for ADC, Accord and 3 others. Our 1999 constitution was drafted by Abdul Salam. A constitution is a covenant, not a machine. And those are the stories from The Nation for this morning. And on the Nigerian Tribune for this morning, I have this story that says, appeal court halts execution of judgments deregistering ADC, Accord and 3 others. And it's on the page 2 of the Nigerian Tribune for this morning. And still on the front page, 1999 transition, ADC didn't meet a requirement for registration, says Abdul Salam. And also on the front page, Oyebamiji came well prepared for leadership. He deserves another term, Tinubu tells Ekiti voters. And that is on page 2 of the Nigerian Tribune for this morning. And still on that front page, 2027, defect loses your seat, says NDC signs indemnity form with candidates. And also terrorism, We have recorded 150 conviction in 2 days, says federal government, and that story is on page 26 of the Nigerian Tribune for this morning. And still on the Nigerian Tribune, 2 soldiers, 1 policeman killed as gunmen attack NIPSS in Kuru, Jos. And that story is on page 26. And also still on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune for this morning, or you're not Chibok, we will rescue abducted pupils, teacher, says Makinde. And it has a rider that says, as VDM leads protest against insecurity. And moving forward to the Guardian newspaper for this morning, I have this story that says digital adoption leaves 300 local government stranded dependents on POS agents. I am ready to risk my life for release of Orire abductees, Makinde vows. Atiku Mark-led opposition pushback as appeal court alt party deregistration. Lagos 2027, still in search of strong, organized opposition. Petrol remains 1,350 naira per liter in Abuja amid crashing oil prices. Dangote effects 75 naira cuts. And those are the headlines that made it to the front page of the Guardian newspaper for this morning. And moving forward to Daily Post for this morning with this headlines that says Nigerian government identify 470 grazing reserves to end open cattle roaming. And also, he was never kidnapped. Nigerian police mourn death of DCP Kan Saliu. Edo government demolishes building linked to cultism and rituals activities. Alleged student extortion, 4 years suspend SUG president and 2 senior officials. Customs intercept 12.7 billion naira cannabis and expired drugs in Lagos. If you're just tuning in, it's the newspaper review on JDN Radio 101.5 FM, the only radio station that is broadcasting for all. And we are situated at 1 Church Street, Joyce B Road, Okeado, in the city of Ibadan, Nigeria. And this morning, I have the Punch newspaper, so I will be giving us stories from the headlines that made it to the front page of the Punch newspaper for this morning, the 17th of June, 2026. And this headline that says, Max slams federal government after appeal court reverses ADC deregistration. Following the Court of Appeal's decision to reverse the deregistration of the African Democratic Congress and 4 other parties on Monday, ADC National Chairman Senator David Marks stated the judiciary is on trial and warned the federal government against political manipulation. Stakeholders also called the sanctions against Justice Peter Lifu for flouting a Supreme Court order as the ADC assures supporters they will remain on the ballot. Political parties and stakeholders affected by the Federal High Court controversial degeneration order welcomed the Court of Appeal's decisions to stay the execution of the judgment. The Court of Appeal in Abuja had on Tuesday ordered a stay of execution of the judgment that directed the Independent National Electoral Commission to deregister the ADC, Action's People's Party, Action Alliance, Accord Party, and Zenith Labour Party, while delivering a stinging rebuke of Justice Lifu for floating a May 22 appellate court order restraining him for delivering the ruling. And this story continues on the Punch newspaper for this morning. On the Punch with this headline that says state kick as Senate moves to amend Electricity Act. A fresh battle over the control of Nigeria's electricity sector is brewing as state electricity regulators have accused the National Assembly of attempting to claw back powers already dissolved to states under the Constitution and the Electricity Act 2023. In a strongly worded memorandum submitted to the Senate Committee on Power and obtained by a correspondent on Tuesday, electricity regulatory commissions and bureaus from 16 states warned that the proposed Electricity Act Amendment Bill 2026 could reverse one of the most significant reforms in Nigeria's power sector. The regulators argued that the amendment bill, rather than strengthening the electricity market, seek to restore extensive federal oversight over matters they insist have constitutionally become the responsibility of the states. The concerns were contained in a letter dated May 26, 2026, addressed to the chairman of the Senate Committee on Power and signed on behalf of the state electricity regulatory commissions and bureaus. Signatories to the document include the chairman and chief executive of electricity regulators in Abia, Anambra, Bayelsa, Edo, Ekiti, Enugu, Gombe, Imo, Kogi, Lagos, Nasarawa, Niger, Ogun, Ondo, Oyo, and Plateau states. The regulators said they are taking advantage of the Electricity Act 2023 to begin building subnational electricity markets and had already engaged investors based on the framework created by the law. And the story continues on the Punch newspaper for this morning. "150 terrorists convicted in 48 hours, says AGF. The federal government has secured approximately 150 convictions within the first 2 days of its latest phase of mass terrorism trial. Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice Lateef Fagbemi San disclosed this on Tuesday. Fagbemi made the disclosure while speaking with journalists at the Federal High Court in Abuja, where the trials are being conducted simultaneously before 10 judges of the court. The AGF said the current phase, which commenced on Monday, had already recorded about 160 trials, leading to roughly 150 convictions on its first day alone. Yesterday, we had 160 trials. I think about 150 convictions, Fagbemi told reporters. He added that proceedings on Tuesday brought approximately 300 cases before the court, with another 84 cases expected to be concluded before the close of the day. And this story continues on the Punch newspaper for this morning. newspaper review on JDN Radio 101.5 FM. And I'm moving forward to the nation for this morning with this headline that says, renewed onslaught against bandits. Terrorists excite Tinubu. The war against terrorism gained momentum in the last 72 hours, resulting in a wider crackdown on insurgents, bandits, and their collaborators. A notorious bandit leader, Ibrahim Bastuji, who had led many attacks, was killed in Kogi. A woman collaborators with bandits was sentenced to death in Katsina. 1,000 forest guards are to be deployed in the vast forests of Katsina, where bandits are very active. This follow Monday stormings of bandit camp in Tunga village, Katsina State, by troops of Operation Fasam Yaman, who rescued the widow of Major General Rabi Abubakar, who died in the abductor's custody. Inspector General of Police Tunji Disu, who said a tactical squad cracked the abductions of the former power minister Adebayo Adelabu's sisters and children in Ibadan, vowed that the police would not take their foot off the pedal. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu hailed the major security breakthroughs while announcing the killing of Bastuji. And this story continues on The Nation for this morning. Respite for ADC, Accord, and 3 others. Respite came for 5 political parties on the registration tours yesterday. The Court of Appeal altered the federal government court's judgment on their delisting. The Appellate Court of Appeal, the sitting in Abuja, a stay of execution order on the judgment by Justice Peter Lifu of the Federal High Court Abuja, directing the Independent National Electoral Commission to deregister the African Democratic Congress ADC, Action Alliance AA, Action People's Party APP, Accord, and Senate Labour Party ZLP. A 3-member panel of the Appellate Court, led by Justice Abba Mohammed, faulted Justice Lifu for delivering the judgment, despite an order by the Court of Appeal on May 22 directing a stay of proceedings in the case before this court. The Court of Appeal was on the view that Justice Lifu's actions amounted to an affront on the hierarchy of courts in the country. The appeal court said the trial court actions was the highest form of judicial impertinence, stressing that the Supreme Court previously held that a judge who acted in such manner is unfit for the bench as it amounts to judicial rascality. Justice Mohammed says courts are enjoined to protect their integrity. This court has supervisory authority over the trial court. The decisions of the lower court to proceed with the judgment despite the express order of the court is a brazen violation of the hierarchy of the court and the 1999 Constitution. And this story continues on The Nation for this morning. The newspaper review, and if you want to be part of the conversation, any of the headlines or the story read from any of the dailies that have sparked reactions from you, you can do well to join us on our social media by dropping your comments on JDN Radio 101.5 FM and also on YouTube, JDN Radio 101.5 FM. And I'm also live on Facebook on Abiodun Samson. And also, you can call into the studio line to be part of the conversation on 07048 001015 and 08022102163. Let me call the number again, 07048 001015 and 08022102163. And moving forward to Daily Post for this morning with this headline that says Nigerian government identifies 470 grazing reserves to end open cattle roaming. The federal government of Nigeria has identified 470 gazetted and legally recognized grazing reserves across the country for the rehabilitation and settlement of pastoralists as part of the measures to phase out open cattle roaming in cities such as Abuja and Lagos. The Minister of Livestock Development, Idi Maha, disclosed this during an interview while discussing the implementation of the National Dairy Policy Framework and broader reforms in the livestock sector. Maha explained that relocating herders into designated reserves would improve disease monitoring, animal health care, and livestock breeding system. Responding to questions on whether cattle roaming in city streets would soon end, the minister said open grazing had become unsustainable, noting that long-distance cattle movement negativity affect productivity and contribute to Nigerians' inability to meet local dairy demands. And the story continues on Daily Post for this morning. I'm taking this comment from Facebook, and this comment is saying that, and this is from Dr. Mrs. Olibara. She said, where is our love, where our brotherhood and harmony? And she also further says, where lies our sense of community and genuine respect for character and human life? Is blood no longer costly? Is human life no longer sacred and precious? Why have we degenerated to this level of oligarchism, thuggery, and violence? And why have we shifted to things that divide, ethnic crises, and unimaginable pains instead of those that promote unity and growth? And she added, so worrisome. And all of these are the questions she's asking, that where is love? So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for your comments. And also thank you for joining us at Debayo Timileyin Timoni, and also Shegun Afolabi Shigo following us on our social media, and Akiade Adeshino for joining us for this morning on the newspaper review. And as you know that the newspaper review comes up every day, 7:30 a.m. to 8 a.m. on JDN Radio 101.5 FM. And our time is fast spent, and I will be calling it a wrap this morning on the newspaper review. And as you know that if you have any reactions or any headline spark or reaction within you, do not worry that it will be coming up on Yoruba language translation on our phone, where you can let them know your thoughts and your contributions to any of the headlines that spark our reactions. I remain Abiodun Samson, and still on the frequency JDN Radio 101.5 FM, and do not take it away as our phone is coming up shortly.